Hello Mishpucha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another Friday Reads video, and I have recently finished 2 books, and I'm currently reading 4 books, so let's go. So the first book I finished, which I think I finished last Friday, was Islands of Decolonial Love by Leanne Betasamosake Simpson. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be wrong. And I listened to this book on audio. It was narrated by Tantoo Cardinal, who I thought did a very good job with the audio production. It's very short. I think the audiobook was only a little over 3 hours, maybe 3 hours and 15 minutes or something like that. And I did like this overall. I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. And basically it's short stories. Now, they're not, I think, the sort of traditional short story, because all of the narrators sound fairly similar to one another. All of the stories either feature some kind of romantic relationship or sometimes a familial relationship. But I did like this, and most of them are also quite short. Again, I listened to it as audio, and I didn't read the print version of it, but I would venture to say that probably some of them could even be classified as flash fiction, because some of them are very short. But I did like this overall. I think for me, part of the issue with my listening to this audiobook was a me issue and not the book. Because I started listening to it before I left Athens, and I think I was about 2/3 of the way through it. And then I came home to my parents' house in North Carolina, and so there was a lot of stuff going on when I first got here, and so I didn't really get a chance to finish it until a decent bit, at least like several days after I had first started it, and I really would have rather have just, listened to the whole thing over a couple of days, or, 2 or 3 days, something like that. And so it maybe didn't land quite as well for me, I think, because of the sort of breaking up of time between when I first started it and then when I eventually came back and finished it. But I did like the stories overall, and I thought it says a lot of important things about decolonization, and tells a lot of important truths about Indigenous communities, especially in Canada. So I'd certainly recommend it, especially if you're looking for a fairly short audiobook that you could just, listen to relatively quickly. Would also recommend it if you like stories by Indigenous writers, or if you just kind of like short stories in general, especially ones that tend to the shorter side. So again, I did like it overall, 3.75 stars. The next book I finished is The Mythical Man-Month by Frederick P. Brooks Jr. Finally finished this book. I was a little bit worried that I would not make it through this by the end of the year, but I finished it. So the backstory on this, in case you didn't watch the video where I already said this, is that I knew Fred Brooks Jr. personally. Before I went to graduate school, I worked for a time as an administrative assistant in the Department of Computer Science at UNC Chapel Hill, and that is where Fred Brooks worked for the latter half or more of his career. He founded that department and stayed there as a professor for a long time, and even after he officially retired, things still stayed on as emeritus professor. So I'm not sure if he's still alive, by the way. I'm not sure if he's still actively involved in goings-on in the department, but I know he is, officially retired at this point. So he's a very big name in computer science, and he won the Turing Award, which is basically like the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for computer science. Very intelligent man. So he gifted this to me himself, and it is signed, and I finally wanted to get around to reading it after all this time. So it is essays that are mainly about his time at IBM, because he managed the IBM 360 project and a couple of other big software engineering projects while he was at IBM. So basically these essays are sort of reflections on how to manage these sorts of teams in terms of thinking about what kinds of people need to be involved and how you manage people, but also how the projects themselves should be managed, etc., etc. And so for that reason, it had a lot of content that was sort of more specific to the computer engineering, computer science end of things. So even though I understood kind of what the main point of all of the essays was, there was some terminology and just concepts discussed that I was not familiar with because I am a layperson as far as computer science and software engineering is concerned. I did think occasionally I got a few good insights out of this book, especially when it comes to managing people. One thing that he said that struck me as really profound, like it's like a simple insight, but like one of those things that's really profound because like if you stop and think about it, of course that's the case, but you have to like come to that realization first, you know? So one of those things that he said was that when you're managing a team, you have to work with the people you have and not whatever the idealized version of these people is in your head, basically. So the focus should not necessarily be on what you want the outcome to be or what you would do under the given circumstances, but it has to be on understanding what the talents of everyone on the team are and then utilizing those talents in the best possible way in combination. So I thought that was a really great insight. And then something else he said that I, again, found one of those things to be simple but quite profound, was that when you have meetings with people, you need to pretty much say up front whether this is a status review meeting or a problem action meeting. So essentially, like, are you just giving an update on something, or is there actually a problem that needs to be solved right now? And I thought that was a great insight. It could be usefully applied to meetings in pretty much any discipline, and I think it could also be usefully applied to conversations that you would just have in your regular life with people. I think would probably be greatly improved by, you know, knowing whether if someone's complaining about a problem, is this just a status review situation or is this a problem action situation where you actually want advice, you know? So I quite like that as well. So anyway, so I ended up giving this 3 stars because it is well written, it's clearly communicated, and I understood most of the ideas despite not being in this field. But because I'm not in this field and I'm not really the intended audience for this, it was very slow going for me. It was kind of a slog to get through. And it ended up taking me, I think, almost a month to read this book that's not quite even 300 pages long. But again, it's very clearly communicated, and I thought would be beneficial, certainly, to if it were read by people who are in this field or even people who are in any kind of management field for those kinds of managerial insights that I mentioned previously. So 3 stars. So that is everything I finished recently. So in terms of currently reading, I am still reading Dostoyevsky's The Idiot. I have fewer than 200 pages left in this book. I think I have about 190 pages left right now, but I have not read the portion of it that I intend to read for today. So hopefully by the time I do that, I'll be down to about 160 pages. So still on track to finish this by the end of the year. This book has taken some interesting turns that I wasn't necessarily expecting, because the first part of it kind of sets up a love triangle of sorts between Prince Mishkin and Rogozhin and Nastasia Filipovna, but then that all kind of goes into the background, and then other things start happening in parts 2 and 3 of the book, and we really haven't gotten back around to the love triangle aspect. So I'm curious to see if that will be resolved in part 4 or not. I suspect it will, but we'll see. So that's still going well. I'm also still reading The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, and if you can see where the bookmark is, I have about 150 pages left of this, so I'm very excited about that. I'm into book 6 of this. I think I will film a standalone review of this novel when I finish, so if you are interested in that, that will be forthcoming before the end of the year. I'm kind of tempted to just try to finish this, you know, in the next, like, maybe 3 days or something, but we'll see if I end up doing that or not. I am still enjoying this, but yeah, I've been reading this for basically since I think almost mid-November, something like that, so I am kind of anxious to to just go ahead and finish it, especially since, again, I'm about 150 pages, within 150 pages of the end. So yeah, so this is going well. I'm continuing to enjoy it. And again, a full standalone review of this book will be forthcoming if you are interested in that. So we'll certainly meet my goal to finish that by the end of this year. I'm also currently reading In the Country of Men by Hisham Matar. Hisham Matar is a Libyan author, and this book tells the story of Suleiman, who I think is 9 when this starts, and there has been a revolution in Libya, and it's under a very authoritarian, dictatorial kind of regime where people's views are suppressed if they don't agree with what the sort of mainstream views being stated are, including being, taken away and things like that, or having their houses searched and possessions seized and things of that sort. So basically Suleiman's father is in deep what as far as that's concerned, because he has all these books, and it seems like he's been involved in some sort of activist circles. So we sort of see things that are done by Suleiman's mother and also his father's friend, Musa, I think his name is, to kind of cover up what's been going on. And the father's kind of been in and out. For a while he's missing, and then he comes home for a little bit, and now he's leaving again. And we also sort of see the emotional toll that all of this has taken on his mother. So I'm about halfway through that right now, and this is my last book for my Arab American literature project that I've done this year, where every month I've read one book by an Arab American writer. So this is a fairly short book, so I imagine I will finish that up in the next 2 or 3 days as well. And then the last book that I'm currently reading is Disintegration, The Splintering of Black America by Eugene Robinson. I am a little bit over 100 pages into this. I'm about 40% of the way through it, because it's, I think, about 250 pages or something. So basically, Robinson argues in this book that sometime around the civil rights era, Black America started splintering from one kind of more monolithic group into 4 distinct subgroups, which he argues are an abandoned group of sort of more poor, impoverished people, a mainstream majority of people who are kind of solidly middle class, a very elite, transcendent group that would include people like Oprah Winfrey and other, Barack Obama and other Black people in positions of power, essentially, who've done quite well for themselves financially. And then the last group is kind of 2 separate groups, but he calls them both emergent. And one of them consists of African immigrants to the United States, and then the other group consists of mixed race individuals who kind of challenge the notion of what it even means to be Black. So this is an interesting book. I'm enjoying it so far. It's pretty easy to read, so I imagine I will finish this. I'm certainly going to finish it by the end of the year, so by this time next week. So that is everything that I either finished recently or I'm currently reading. If you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear that. Please feel free to let me know that down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this. I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, would it kill you to call you mother?